Good morning and welcome to Mayor's Weekly. As always, we're pleased to have you with us, and we want to use this segment to just spend time on updates, things that are going on, and probably ought to spend more time on that subject, the subject of updates of what's going on in the city. I've asked Kathy Shamliss to join me, and the first thing it will lead off with, we've talked a good deal about the 4-point plan since it was first introduced to the council in July of 2021, just almost a year ago, and where we're at, three major points: new city hall, paving, sportsplex. Things are progressing nicely on the city hall. Kathy is heading up that committee, and Kathy, your thoughts, where you're at? I know you've done a great job in moving that along, and I think there'll be visible activity there in the near future.
It should be. I know the architect's currently working on a bid to send out to remove the structure that wrapped around Share Auditorium, and that should be bid within the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I think. We've already got pretty much the plans, the design of the office areas, and looking at some of the interior colors and flooring and that type of thing. So we're pretty far along. It's just a matter of getting the plans and getting them out for bid and getting construction underway.
I've asked Kathy to let me be hands-off on all of that, and she's agreed, and I'm going to hold her to her agreement.
Oh, that's the fun part, though.
The paving project, we've made the decision that we'll do the paving in 2 phases. Anybody that's bought any gasoline in the last few days know what's happening there, and that drives up the cost of paving, but we're going to move along with phase 1 just yesterday, just a couple of days back. The council approved moving forward with getting bids on phase 1, and we'll see how that turns out. And if it were to come back at the engineering firm said you ought to wait, then I would think that's what the council would do. But the money for the paving project, just like the city hall, the money is available to do the job. We want to be smart about how we spend our money. And then we're told with the committee that is working on a sportsplex that they will have a group here at our work session, next work session, which will be a week from Friday. I believe that's right, isn't it, Kathy, to
Yes,
give us their thoughts, and then we see how that moves along. But that's a project that we need to get moving. It's a project that this city's interested in, and again, the money's there to make it work. So there's really not a reason to have the project not move along. The council meeting this week, the 2 projects that are funded by grants, when you're using grant funding, and I'm so thankful for grant funding, but you play with the grant rules. Is that right, Kathy?
sure do.
And it moves slower than I like it. When you come out of the private sector, it's a big adjustment to see how slow government can move, and certainly it moves much slower than it does in the private sector. But we signed this week the documents necessary to get the West 19th Street project moving. We learned that in addition, of course, we've known from the outset it's a city project, and the Jasper Waterworks and Utility Board will be joining the city. They have work to do there, that there may be an expansion of what they plan to do there in the form of more enhanced sewer facilities. Is that correct, Kathy?
Water and sewer, yes.
Water and sewer. So we think that project will be underway before the end of the year. We've talked about the project out on Highway 78 and 118 in the area of north end of Jones Dairy Road, and we signed the necessary documents for that to move along. That project is in the hands of the Alabama Department of Transportation, because that's where the funding is flowing to the city from. And but what leadership at ALDOT, Alabama Department of Transportation, tells us is that they think the project will be moving by mid-year, by the end of the year. And that's a project that's going to bring much needed relief, safety enhancements to that area. During the construction phase, it'll cause some inconveniences, but we just have to work through that, and hopefully it will not last too long. But to have the improvements that are going to be made far outweigh any inconvenience we'd encounter, Kathy. Now, talking about sidewalks, that everybody views things differently, and we had a person tell us we ought to stop building these sidewalks and put the money somewhere else, you know, to light up some facility or whatever. And I thought, what an observation. And a lot of people don't know this, but I learned basic math in a rural school in Walker County. I think I learned it fairly well. And what that basic math tells me, that any time that you can do a good project and you can pay for 20% of it and somebody else pays for 80% of it, you ought to do it. Did you learn that where that country school you went to, Kathy?
That's pretty good math.
Yeah. And I see no reason to stop doing that, do you?
No, sir.
And just a day or so ago, Kathy and I met with an engineering firm as we look to our next sidewalk project, and we're not fully settled on that, but we know the general area. We will see some conceptuals in probably the next couple of weeks, and we'll give final approval to that. What happens from there, then those conceptuals work their way in with a proposed budget and a grant application. And Kathy, I think on the grants for sidewalks in the last 5 years, I think we're batting 1,000%, aren't we? I don't think we've lost one, have we?
We have not. We've had some good projects, and the ALDOT has liked the looks of them.
And this will be a good project. And like I said, we know generally where it's going to be, and there may be an addition or a deletion of what was shown to us. But that'll firm up, and like I said, the next week or so we'll get our grant application in so we can continue. But you look at what this grant monies, and I put a pencil to it, but several $1 million have come to the city of Jasper for these projects. It's federal money that flows through the state of Alabama and owned in municipalities. So again, you walk across these sidewalks, federal money paid for 80% of it, the city of Jasper paid 20%. And you'd have a hard time arguing that that's not a good way to do things. Kathy, we our man, because you've been in the public sector for a long, long time, and I'm still trying to adjust to the working on a fiscal year. And the program and my whole life around the calendar year starts in January and December, but fiscal year ends September 30. And you think, well, man, this was a short year, but it's 12 months. It just started earlier, didn't it? But where I'm going with this, Kathy, is it's time, and knowing you, it's probably already underway. Are you beginning to work on budget for fiscal year 2023?
I've got the thoughts in my head. I'll, within the next couple of weeks, begin to put everything on paper, but we should wrap up this year, another good year for the city. Sales tax is still coming in, though not the growth we saw last year. So although trying to get as much of this year data in before we start trying to project the next year is one of the things I'm probably just holding up a little bit on. A little bit of uncertainty out there, as we know. We've talked
a good deal about this, and I sometimes use football analogies. And our revenues are not growing at the pace they grew last year, and that's not a reason for concern. But last year, Kathy, you've been here a long time, was the best year maybe in the history of the city in sales tax growth. And I said, Kathy, if we duplicate last year, I think we've done pretty good, and we're going better last year. Now, the football analogy I used, I said if Coach Saban wins a national championship in one year, he comes behind it and wins a national championship the second year, he still won a national championship. So to duplicate last year is commendable, wouldn't you say?
Very commendable.
And we budgeted some $29 million for fiscal year 2022. We'll better that. What Kathy, I didn't step out on, and I'll take a little risk here. But we read financial news about every day, and there's a tremendous amount of talk that the economy nationwide could begin to slow. And I tell folks my primary economic indicator for Jasper is the drive-through line at Jack's in the morning. And all of last year was not a morning that went by that the line was not backed out into the public right-of-way. And I've noticed that the line is not as long as it used to be. I observed that this morning, and that's it's a pretty good indicator, Kathy, how things are going, because it's talking about what it tells you is how much disposable income's out there that people can spend for whatever they want to spend, and when that line shortens or whatever, that tells you there's not as much money to be spent, and if it's not spent, it doesn't ring the sales tax meter for us, does it?
It does not, and you know, it's just real. We are seeing a bit of a less growth in sales tax. So.
Yeah. Kathy and I saw it in the banking business, and the uniqueness of Jasper is relative to economic conditions. It seems as the economy begins to slow, Jasper's a little slow to go down the hill into the tank, and consequently they're a little slow to come out of the tank. And but we have built significant reserves. We've talked about a rainy day, and you know a rainy day will come, and but we are prepared to weather any downturn we have. Had a meeting with one of our council members yesterday, and we talked about that and how do we prepare for next year. And what Kathy touched on is we'll do what we've done all along. We'll take a conservative approach, and that conservatism starts with projecting revenue. And if you get that right, manage the expenses, then you end up okay, don't you?
Yes, sir, and we will end up okay.
We'll end up okay. So that's pretty much where we're at. I talked a little bit in the council meeting about housing development, and so pleased to see that happening in our city. That it's hard to quantify all the benefits that it brings. When you have construction workers in our city, and they buy fuel, and they buy lunch, and they maybe stay at our lodging facilities, and materials purchased, and those sort of things. Great contributor to the city coffers, and the commitment that's been made to residential development in our city. I think even if the economy turns down some, you'll see that continue on. I think is considerable demand by prospective home buyers and people, I think, wanting to live in Jasper, Kathy, because we know that the absorption rate of all these homes, in all likelihood, is not coming just from Jasper residents. So I'm excited about that. Our paving project, I go back to that. That's going to be a nice add to our city. What I can tell you, had somebody said District 4 and District 5 have been overlooked. I vehemently refute that. what we know in this paving budget, probably the lion's share will go into District 4 and District 5. That's a far cry from those districts being overlooked. Is that right, Kathy?
It is right.
Right. So I always welcome your questions. If you feel strongly about something and want to voice your opinion, we'll invite you to come on board here with us and let you have the seat where Kathy's at, and we'll just talk about what you want to talk about. But if you have an urge to do that and want to critique the city or whatever, you let us know, and we'll see if we can arrange making that happen. So pleased to be with you this morning, and we'll look forward to being with you next week.